Okay, if there is anything Chris Hadfield can't do, well, he still has to find it, okay? His CV includes singer, songwriter, astronaut, best-selling author who's got a brand new book.
Here it is. The Defector takes place in 1973 when a state-of-the-art Soviet jet fighter disappears, leading to a high-stakes game of spies, lies, and defection. And for more, we are joined by Chris. All right. So, Chris, you're such a busy man. How do you do this in your spare time?
I think it's really good to have multiple things going on, but I found that when I'm writing books, especially fiction, they're always just sort of ticking away in the back of my head. No matter where I am, you know, if you're standing in line somewhere, you've got these various plot ideas, and the main characters of these books, they're always with me, like almost like consultants around me. And so they're like, how would I react to all these things? And you see a thing go by, hey, that'd be interesting for the book. So it's almost like just having a parallel dialogue going on with yourself while you're doing all the other things.
So were you
life.
writing notes? Did something come to you and then you're like, oh gosh, hold on
I do
one
that
second.
all the time, and you know, a mobile phone's great for that, because you go, or you run into a person with a really interesting name, or you hear a turn of phrase, or you get an idea, and just send yourself a quick note so you remember. And then you got to sit down and morning after morning go through the process of writing a book. But I really enjoy it. It's just a creative process like anything else.
What number is this? Sorry.
This is my 5th book. My 2nd thriller fiction. The first thriller fiction was The Apollo Murders, and this is the next. It's got the same, you know, main characters. You know, what happened next. And I'm actually working on the 3rd book in the series, in the early research stage of the 3rd book in the series now. So.
Now, I was going to say, part of this book, you draw on your own experience as a test fighter pilot?
Yeah. I was a combat fighter pilot in the Cold War. I flew F-18s for a living, and there's a picture when I was down at sort of the Fighter Pilot Olympics, a thing called William Tell, and that's when I was a test pilot. But I did the very first flying one of Canada's CF-18s, intercepting Soviet bombers who were practicing attacks on North America and during the Cold War. And I would race out in the middle of the night. I would sleep in the quick reaction facility. You had to be airborne 12 minutes. From sound asleep, you had to be airborne in your F-18 in 12 minutes, race out over the North Atlantic, and intercept the Soviet bombers before they could get to the line where they could release their cruise missiles. So I did that for a living. As a Cold War fighter pilot, and then a test pilot, and then an astronaut. And so all of that weaves into my background to be able to write a book like The Defector.
Yeah, not that he has to, but do you get the feeling that Chris Hadfield would be like the best candidate for a job interview? Like if you had to sit down and interview him for a job and you're looking at his CV and you'd be, tell me more about that and this.
I never want my resume to go up against Chris's. No. That is for sure. Where does writing rank of all the things you've done and do?
It was my first love, really. I loved language and English and stuff in school. I've always been a voracious reader, but I'm the type of person, when you're reading a book and there's a paragraph that is exquisitely written, I'm like, I'll read that paragraph 10 times and going, how did the writer, how did they use the language so well and almost look at it as a work of art on its own? Like when you see a painting and you're just, man, how did they do the brushstrokes? And so I always wrote, but I knew that wasn't going to, you know, get me to command a spaceship. So I did an engineering degree and such. But I always had in the back of my mind that someday I'd like to try and write. And the previous book, The Apollo Murders, has been an international bestseller, and it's being made into an 8-part television series.
Oh,
and so you know, which is really exciting for me. And so this is a lot of fun to go through the whole process of coming up with characters, a story, and then making it fit with history in a way that, as the reader, you can't tell what I made up and what actually happened in history. So yeah, I'm all the other things I'm doing are fun, but writing thriller fiction is a real exciting part of it.
Okay, not only do you write books, you're also, as we know, a songwriter and a fellow musician. Ed Robertson from the Bare Naked Ladies, he was recently with us here on TMS because BNL, they're celebrating 35 years, their 35th anniversary. And your name actually came up, Chris. I wanted to show you this clip.
Oh.
Finally, spend 1 week in space with musical collaborator Chris Hadfield, the commander, or 1 week watching a Big Bang Theory marathon, which, of course, Bare Naked Ladies did the theme for.
Every time I'm with Commander Hadfield, I learn a lot. He's also funny. He's super interesting. I would go. Of course, I'd love to be in space for 1 hour, but any time with Chris Hadfield is time well spent. So I'm going with that.
Nice.
What a nice thing for Ed to say. Ed's a great guy.
Yeah.
And he's a fellow pilot, and I talk to Ed every week. And yeah, we've co-written music together, and we've performed all over the place together as well. So yeah, what he just said about me, oh gosh, I say all that about Ed. He's a really interesting guy and such a creative spark.
Okay, from Ed to Jeremy. We're counting down to next year's mission.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm talking Artemis 2.
Yeah, Jeremy Hansen. Yeah.
Yes. Any advice? Have you talked? Have you given? Tell me about conversations with Jeremy.
Well, you know something really significant. In the entire history of our species, only 24 human beings have ever left Earth orbit, and they've all been American. And the first human ever to leave Earth orbit who isn't an American is going to be Jeremy Hansen from Southern Ontario when he launches to go around the moon late next year or early 2025. I'm going to see Jeremy this week, actually. I'll be up at the Canadian Space Agency with him. He doesn't need my advice. I mean, he's been an astronaut since 2009, super accomplished, a wonderful family man. His wife's a doctor, a pilot, a great leader of people down in the astronaut program. So yeah, I'm really excited for Jeremy, and he's been a public servant his entire life, and he's been an astronaut for 14 years, and finally he's getting to fly, and he's going on a historic mission all the way around the moon and back. So I couldn't be happier for Jeremy, and I'm really looking forward to his launch and mission.
Yeah, which is about a year away now, right?
Yeah,
next
maybe
November.
a little more, but yeah, a little over a year.
Listen, before we let you go, Colonel, we want to let you know it's Furry Friday here on TMS, where we celebrate our viewers' pets.
Oh, great.
We wanted to show this pic of your dog.
Oh, there's Henry.
That's Henry. Tell us a little bit more about Henry in this picture.
Henry, he's a King Charles. He was King Charles before that was cool, actually. And he's a great dog. He's 2 years old. I got him out in British Columbia, and he's just a terrific dog. He is always trying to do the right thing. You know,
as we all are.
Always tries to do the right. Henry's a great little dog. My wife and I have a dog since before we got married, and Henry is a great companion to have going through life.
Well, if Henry isn't watching, you make sure you tell him he was featured on TMS today as well with Daddy.
He'll be appropriately excited.
The Defector is now available everywhere books are sold. Chris, always a pleasure.
Thank you. Nice to see you both. Thanks. Hope you enjoy the book.